Hi Jean-François, thank you so much for having us today. So for the audience, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
So I'm Jean-François Archambault. I'm a social entrepreneur dedicated to fight against food insecurity, but also developing food education and food literacy amongst youth, both in the school system and in the youth services programs. We've been launching La Tablée. I'm the founder of La Tablée des Chefs. I founded La Tablée des Chefs about 20 years ago. We have 20 years today, and we've been doing this fight for over 20 years and trying to create the social impact that we wanted, both, like I said, on food insecurity and also on the food education.
Yeah, so please tell us more about La Tablée des Chefs. Tell us more about your journey. You mentioned the mission, but yeah, could you please elaborate on your work and the journey that's been exciting since you started the organization?
Yes, well, a little bit, like your background, when I was studying, I was interested in making a change, and when I started studying in hotel management at l'ITHQ in Montreal, I realized the amount of food that we were wasting while we were practicing our skills, to develop our skills for cooking, culinary skills. So the amount of food that was wasted, I could not imagine. Food that we would have eaten, everyone, but there was so much because we would prep food for about 80 people and we're about 20 students. So that triggered something in me where I cannot stand to throw away food. And that was back in 1996, okay? So not even early 2000. And food waste was not, the fight against food waste or food waste as a subject was not the most popular subject. It was not something that was preoccupying or that was
People
a target,
were not concerned
a
about
social
this,
target, or even talking about corporate social responsibility in the hospitality sector was not a subject up for discussion. But it was something that was shocking for me. So I started working in the hotel industry as a first job. I started working at the Château Vaudreuil, a really nice hotel in Montreal, doing a lot of weddings and seeing again what I was seeing, what I was studying, a lot of food that was at the end, when you saw the cooks coming in early in the morning, prepping all that food to feed on any given Saturday, about 2,000 people in-house, weddings, 4 or 5 weddings happening at the same time. And you would see the bins, the garbage bins in the back being full of food that, again, everybody would have eaten, knowing that there's people that are food insecure at the same time in your own city, it can't work for me.
Of course.
So that's what triggered the original thought, that triggered the thought, but I was not yet acting on it,
Makes sense.
So it was just the initial thought that I have to do something about this,
Yeah, makes sense. And on that point, you mentioned some really really important figures. What is wrong with the food system? How can we have more than 60% of the food produced in Canada that is either wasted or lost? What can we do better, and what should we do better, in your opinion?
I think there's 2 things for me, because at the same time, food waste, the fight against food waste, or recovering, for me, it's recovering excess food to address food insecurity. But at the same time, food insecurity is not the solution to fight food waste. For sure, right now, you don't want to throw away that food when it would feed people that need it. So when you look at the spike in food insecurity with the pandemic and everything, even before the pandemic, it was high. You need to address that food insecurity by giving access to food. And that right now, short term for us, is providing that food that would have been thrown away to people that need it. Okay, so that's the first thing. But as a whole, economically, someone that has the smallest budget to buy food for his family or for himself should be the most skilled to face it, to face that situation.
Yeah.
So at the same time, you know, when you look at food literacy, food education, building skills and knowledge around food so someone becomes independent and can take care of themselves and their family on a tight budget, knowing what to put on the table is the key for us. So the combination of action of addressing food waste by taking that food that would have been wasted and feeding people right now. We feed over 1 million people a year with the food recovery program in the hospitality sector, all so across impressive. Canada and over 200 establishments.
Yeah.
But on the other side, we're getting into the schools with chefs that have the knowledge and skills to fight food waste, to build that knowledge. So I think right now, the problem, when you look at someone in their house that have families and that are creating waste, they're buying too much. They don't know what to do with their excess food. They haven't planned properly. They probably bought, like I said, too much food. And they're not creative enough because they probably don't have the right knowledge and skills on cooking. So for me, cooking, as simple as it is, people should cook more.
Absolutely.
Home meals to introduce this food so it's not wasted.
Absolutely. And just change maybe your perspective towards food, maybe stop being too picky at the supermarket and just have a different approach to food. I think that's what you're doing at La Tablée. Yeah. And so basically, what do you focus on? We talked about educating young people, especially young people, about all the issues that are around food. But concretely, what is the message? What are you trying to achieve with this the different training programs that you have?
The global message is to create food ambassadors. Yeah. With these teenagers that have an interest in learning more about food. Yeah. So we're reaching over 4,000 teenagers in the school system. We're present in now, we've started in the 4 poorest high schools in the city of Montreal. Yeah. In the areas where poverty index were really high, in Saint-Henri, Hochelaga Maisonneuve, Saint-Michel. And in these 4 schools, we understood the needs, and that's where we started back 15 years ago with the programs. Now, we're reaching private schools that are paying for the full program. We're sponsoring the program or funding the program for free for any public school with the help of the government. Yeah. Government is investing $1 per dollar of the private sector corporate social responsibility dollars that we're investing in the programs. And what we're actually doing is we're present in more than half of the public high schools with the Kitchen Brigades program that is coming as an extracurricular program, but also builds into the school life.
That is wonderful.
And so our values of empathy, our values of giving back to others and learning that food has the power to change, and food has the power to trigger a conversation with someone and let go of religion, or what different situation that we are living. When we're at a table together, we're sharing a meal, we forget about the rest.
Absolutely.
And I really think that's where you can see the other and build a relationship or a conversation. So the social skills that can be learned around food is also very powerful. So for us is really, when I say food ambassadors, is these kids, they're not going into the basketball team, they're not going into the school play or the school band to play music or whatever. They have a real interest into food. Yeah. So we bring them chefs, and chefs connect with them on building those knowledge and skills, but giving them the tools to become change makers and to become these actors of change that will, look at food waste and with the eyes I had when I looked at it, but with their own eyes, and having their own level of wanting to change things, and because that's what ultimately you want to do. Absolutely. You want to change the way that following generations.
You want them to own it, I guess.
Approach
right?
and own it. Exactly. Yes. Own it is the right word, because this is how we'll have succeeded. You know, I at some point will take off my apron, you know, and give it to someone else. I already do, because I have a team of 30 people that are, it's no longer my dream or my own dream, it's the dream of my team.
Yeah.
And the people that are surrounding me with this project right now,
yeah,
they believe as much as I do that we need to do this and this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So connecting with more teens, changing their perspective, giving them the tools to become actors of change, this is really what we empower them, is really what we want to do. And so they see by our own, so the other angle is we're fighting food waste by recovering that food and engaging into conversation with chefs in their kitchens, in hotels, in entertainment facilities, and different places, you know, hospitals, cafeterias, university campuses. And the conversation we're having with them is you can also be an actor of change. And you need to lead that inside your organization.
Absolutely.
So the whole situation about, yes, I'm a social entrepreneur, but becoming an intrapreneur. So creating change inside your own organization. It doesn't mean we're all going to be entrepreneurs. You know, we don't have to be. It's not only entrepreneurs that are changing the world,
of course,
or that are making that have the possibility to change things. People inside the organization can also show their leadership and become these entrepreneurs that we need inside the organizations to create that change too.
Absolutely. And what kind of skills are the most important, according to you, when it comes to youth? What kind of knowledge and skills are you trying to implement in those young kids so they can have an impact afterwards?
The first thing is fun.
Yeah. Okay.
It has to be fun.
Yeah.
Food is fun. And that's what we have to connect them with, is you can change things, you can address serious issues, serious situation by having fun.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
I totally agree with you.
If we
totally
do this and we can create that environment, my God, they're all going to want to do it, you know? That's what you want. You
because
know?
it's
so
intrinsic motivation,
the mindset,
it comes from
you
them
know,
again.
and connecting them with and so taste, you know, developing the taste buds, you know, and putting them in contact with food, planting food, growing food.
Yeah.
You know, I have 5 kids at home. I brought my 2-year-old twins last summer to grow the garden. They took out the vegetables after, they grew, they put the seeds. I bring them, you know, in the garden and I show them.
Yeah.
And then we go in the garden once in a while to see how it grows. And then you see the vegetables, you see the cherry tomatoes, and they go and grab them by themselves. And their eyes on food is different. And so when you're in contact with food that's growing, you have a certain respect about that food.
Of course.
And about nature and about the environment.
Yeah.
So imagine you're in contact with food, but it's not just food. It's how you gave it water. You gave them the environment to grow. You protected them, you know, and so you have a respect for the environment automatically, you know. So bring them closer to that, put them hands-on into this situation. This is how we will create change, because you need to have your hands in something to really feel it and to understand it even better.
Yeah,
you know?
That makes a lot of sense. And now going back to the first part of your mission, which is basically to feed people in need, how exactly do you collaborate with other players, maybe with hotels, restaurants, with the government, so you bring food on the table of some people who need it?
We assess the needs, because there's a lot of actors working on food insecurity. So we like to cover the gaps, okay? Yeah. So we feed people in 2 different ways. With the pandemic, there was a new way of feeding people. But before that, the food recovery program. So we really put in place the logistic so that the chefs in their institutions, either hospital cafeteria, food service units, hotels, they have the proper containers. They have the logistics so that they can safely put the food away when it's in excess, in the proper conditions, so that they can be picked up by a community organization that also agrees and commits to the logistic and comes and picks up that food, you know, on a regular basis, so that it can then go and feed the people that they want to feed and they have to feed. The other way we are, so we're recovering over 1.5 million meals before the pandemic in over 170 establishments across Canada. When the pandemic hit, I was scared that that program was going to be turned down because all the hotels in the hospitality sector was closing down.
Yeah, yeah.
So we said, let's keep the chefs in their kitchens. The dining rooms are closing, but if we're able to keep them in the kitchen, they're paid by the wage subsidy. There was a wage subsidy that was brought in to keep them employed, you know, and save their jobs.
Yeah.
So we talk to the hotel managers and our partners and say, hey guys, the government is giving you the wage subsidy if you're keeping your cooks. They're paying 75% of those wages. We'll cover the 25% and we'll fundraise to feed people in need through creating a meal program. So that's where wonderful. The Solidarity Kitchen came up.
That's wonderful.
And, you know, we've been completing our 4th million meal 4 million meals since crazy. April 2020. So not, crazy. You know, even 2 years, 4 million meals. And how we're getting them involved, we're connecting with food distributor, you
mentioned food banks as well,
yeah,
right? Food
banks are the end receivers of these meals, you know, and community organization. But, you know, freezing, warehousing that are lending us some space, transportation company. I've been talking in full load, you know, a 53-footer van, you know, all the time. Like, okay, I have 2 vans, you know, we're getting 26 pallets of mixed vegetables, or we're getting, these are the, you know, we've prepped over 1,000 tons of food during the pandemic that we prepped into meals. So, you know, it's scared at the same time. It's scary because when you look at it,
people need it.
Imagine, people ate these meals, you know. So it's worrying when you think about it, you know. And so it has to stop at some point. People need to feed themselves by themselves. They need to, for sure. There's always going to be a group of population that either are sick or they have mental disease, or they won't be able to feed themselves, and we'll have to help them. It's a basic fact, you know. I was talking about empathy, but there's a group of the population right now that is employed, but are still food insecure. Imagine that's what worries me the most. So yes, the skills, developing the skills, building food literacy, connecting them with growing food so they can grow their own food. You know, connecting them with food co-ops, and so they see the ecosystem in their community that's there, because there are ecosystems. We're not the only players. We're just trying to connect them and open their eyes. We're working with youth services kids that are going through adulthood, early phase. At 18, the government is no longer responsible for them because they're under the child protection law, and they come on to the social service law. And so they have to take care of themselves. They're still going to have that social safety net, but they have to be responsible for themselves. So the transition from 16 to 19 is really key. And that's where we're coming in with the chefs and trying to develop these skills. Because imagine, they're taken care of by the system, feeding them in a cafeteria of a housing unit inside the system, 3 meals a day. Never will they have a family meal. From sometimes from 9 years old, if they're coming into the system and they're out at 18, they're out of their family because they were beaten up, they were sexually abused, there was different situation. And imagine, there's about 40,000 of those teenagers just in the province of Quebec. So imagine if that transition happens and we're thinking that they suddenly will know what a family meal is. They'll know how to go and purchase the food at the grocery store. We connect teenagers of 17-year-old that never set foot in a grocery store. Never.
How is that even possible?
Imagine.
It's crazy.
That happens.
You wouldn't expect that.
It's not the exception. It's not, this kid never went to the grocery store. It's 85% of the kids that are into the youth services programs, into that specific group, never set foot in a grocery store. How do you expect them to manage a budget, keep a job, have an apartment, you know, all of that, if you're not preparing them? So our job is not for everything else I've talked about, but just the food aspect is how can you get them empowered so that they're able to at least handle meal preparation and purchasing food.
That makes a lot of sense. And from a regulation point of view, what, according to you, what needs to change? We mentioned that the food system is broken because of all the food waste that we see, because of how easy it is to buy things at the grocery store and not being held accountable for the food waste that you'll be producing. So we mentioned education, of course, but if you were, for example, part of the government, what kind of regulations you would like to see put in place?
I always say that, you know, it's a bit complicated because the social infrastructure and the amount of food that's wasted right now.
Yeah.
And there's a portion that's recovered by the food banks.
Yeah.
There's a portion that's still wasted, we know.
Yeah.
The social infrastructure of recovering 100% of what could be recovered cannot support it. It can't support it. It's not built and it's not funded to be supported. Now, does it have to be? That's the question. Are we going to just put in place a system that will just make sure we recover all the food, or will we reduce the amount of food that we're producing in the first place and change our habits? It's hard to change habits.
Of course.
So I think we need to reduce the amount of food that we're producing.
Yeah.
And one thing is that's the ball is being thrown from one side to the other is our expectation as customers. Because the companies will throw it in our face to say, the customer expects it. That's what they want. If you come up to the grocery store and you run a test and you have a really ripe tomato that's a little too ripe, but you know, you're going to cook tonight. You want to cook with a really ripe tomato and do a sauce, or do you want to have like this fresh tomato that just out of the plant that won't be able to give you as much juice or as much umami as this really, really ripe tomato, you know? That's the one you want. So people, they just stack food. They buy food and they think they're going to miss some, or they're going to run out, you know? And so they buy. And at the same time, when they're in front of shelves and the shelves are empty, they'll say, oh my God, what's happening with this store? You know, they have empty shelves. What's wrong with empty shelves?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Find something else to buy. And then the stores compare themselves and say, no, I always have this really nice front, you know, place everything really set and replenish all the time, so that the first customer that comes into the store and the last one will have the same choice. Guess what? You know, if it happens that there's no more cucumbers or Lebanese cucumbers, the small ones, I'll take the big one that's growing in the greenhouse or whatever, you know, or I'll just buy something else.
Yeah.
Customers are used to having the shelves stacked up and are expecting it. And I think customers have the power to change that. We have to change that. And if we're not changing that, we're always going to expect to have these shelves full. And then the pressure will go on the retailers to fill these shelves.
Yeah.
They have a responsibility, don't get me wrong. It has to be done together.
But we can also have an impact by just, you know, proving your point and showing our interest in being part of the change as well.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, can you please tell us more about, again, the impact at La Tablée? You mentioned many numbers, but if you had to sum up the impact that you've been having over the past few years, what would you say?
So it's our 20th anniversary.
Yeah. We've
prepped over 13 million meals, including the Solidarity Kitchen meals, the 4 million that I've talked about.
Yeah.
But also the meals prepared with the students in the culinary school.
Yeah.
The activity that's called now Solidarity Kitchen Next Generation. that's mobilizing over 1,000 of the next generation young cooks that are into the learning process. So they're connected with that. So we're working at the roots, creating change with these future cooks, engaging them into these activities, and then over 45,000 youth pass through our programs along the way, you know, and so building their knowledge and skills, their passion, driving that passion they have for food towards a system change, you know, and become actors of change. And so, you know, building up to over 200 public high schools in the province of Quebec, where you have around 400 public high schools. So 1 out of 2 high schools has the Brigades program. This is system change, systemic change, you know.
Absolutely.
So continuing to build the ecosystem, continuing to cover the gaps because you're working with other colleagues from other organizations doing their part and working together as an ecosystem is what we need to be doing. And for us is continue to play that role and continuing to engage the next generation through food literacy and fun.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes, again, a lot of sense. Congratulations for all your work. Thank you so much for the insights today. Last question. Can you please sum up La Tablée des Chefs in 3 words?
I would say,
and you can take your time, of course.
Empathy, passion, and pleasure.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Do you have any last comments, any thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience, maybe?
Like I said, you know, I explained that, you know, I'm a social entrepreneur. Yeah. I did my part, you know. I tried to spark this into others.
Yeah.
I connect with my team, and they drive me as much as I drive them, and it becomes a teamwork.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody can be a change maker.
Absolutely.
I think anybody can be a culinary change maker, and change starts with your own family. It starts by you, but it starts also by your own family. And sometimes it can come from the most unexpected thing, smallest thing that can trigger change of habits, you know. And one little story is the most amazing change can happen through your kids telling you, hey, daddy, hey, mommy, you know.
And you would expect it. You wouldn't expect it.
Why are we doing that?
Yeah.
And you're like, how come we're doing this? You
yeah.
know, we've been doing this for so long.
Yeah.
You know, you hear that.
Yeah.
Changing habits is what we need to be doing, because we're never going to fight the food waste issue if we're not changing our habits.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much again. It was wonderful to connect with you and have this meaningful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Cheers.